Welcome back. My name is Matt Reiners, and I'm the co-founder of Eversound, a company that was recently acquired by Uniguest, which is committed to developing engagement technologies to help communities connect and improve quality of life for older adults. Today, I'm joined by my good friend, Nate Jones, the founder and CEO of Dash Media. I've gotten to know Nate, gosh, what has it been now? 5+ years, whether it was on the conference circuit or just really built a relationship over time. We have very similar values and principles when it comes to serving the senior living industry. And it's just been really awesome to see him on this entrepreneurial journey over the last few years. So thanks for joining me today, Nate.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Matt. I guess you could also add in there we're co-founders of basketball at senior living conferences as
We
well.
I meant
Yet to
to
be
talk about
trademarked.
your basketball skills, but yes, Nate and I have been known to set up some pickup games for senior living conferences, and Nate's really good, so he tends to attract a large audience. So just be ready for that.
Good
Um,
stuff.
so Nate, I know with Dash Media, for those of people that don't know, can you just kind of give us a quick overview of what Dash Media is all about?
Yeah, no, it's kind of morphed over time, but at the same time, we've stayed true to who we are since the very beginning, which is we exist to tell the stories of older adults. I mean, that's what it is in a nutshell. I guess older adults and the people who care for older adults. So we recognize that a lot of people believe in the power of storytelling in senior living. Most people come to the industry because they fell in love with a story of an older adult or had a loved one who aged and they, saw how senior living was. So they wanted to join the industry and begin a career in here. But we saw this void of there's so many people that have a heart for it. There's so many people that want to do it, but nobody has time to film, edit, create, and understand all the different platforms to distribute the content on. And so that's what we do in a nutshell. We equip teams. We join organizations with our videographers, with our video editors, with our social media managers, and our strategists to tell the stories of your residents and people that take care of and the people that take care of them. And it's been fun.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I've seen some of the work you guys put out, and I think it's such a breath of fresh air. 'Cause to your point, right? We've all joined this industry, whether it was a personal story or something like that, but something that hit us in the feels, right? Like something that kind of weighed on the emotional landscape of kind of how we were embracing it. And what you guys seem to be doing with that is just it's really capturing that, right? Because I feel like a lot of the times within senior living, they're putting stuff out on social. It might just be one graphic or one flyer, or just that stereotypical one picture that I can think of that I can probably name 10 websites that are using all at the same time of the stock imagery. But I'm wondering, like, when you're so the community groups you're seeing outside of that, it's not working with Dash, like where are they missing when it comes to capturing these stories or even sharing it, or like even their social presence?
Yeah, I think it comes down to if there's one thing that people can do better is just putting out more. Like I started Senior Living Stories, which is an Instagram account that's reached over 200 million people around the world. It's got about 185,000 followers. It took 5 years or 6 years to get 10,000 followers on that account, and a lot of absolute terrible posts, things that just didn't resonate with people, didn't attract people to follow, probably created more unfollowers than followers. But I posted and it grew. And now you kind of have a formula, you have a voice. People come to that Senior Living Stories accounts to hear stories and see content of older adults. And I think senior living organizations can do the same. I think a lot of senior living organizations view social media as a check in the box. So all right, we did that for this week. We scheduled our Happy Valentine's Day post and we're good to go. Where in the reality is social media is the only place that I know of where people who want to work for you, go and view your profile and see what it's like to work there. People who want to live there, go there. Families who have loved ones living there, go and see how mom's staying connected, how dad's staying connected. Yet we don't take it as seriously as we should. So my number one recommendation to anyone that's doing this internally, doing a social media campaign or just creating content internally, is have a champion that their whole job is to create content. I know that sounds expensive or like a lot, or, but you can't expect results if you're asking the activities person who already has a full-time job, or you're asking the marketing, sales and marketing person who already has a full-time job to do another full-time job and be successful on social, because that's really what it comes down to. It's we see that it takes three people to be successful: a videographer, a video editor, and a social media manager. And the organizations that are doing it internally that I talk to, from the top, from their CEO down to the person filming on their iPhone or on their camera, they all take it really, really seriously. I think in Colin Cray, his group, what is that? I'm blanking on the name. Um, Independence Village, I believe. Story Point.
Oh, yes, Colin,
They do
yes.
an incredible job of internally creating strategy. Arcadia Senior Living, internally creating content for social and for all their different platforms, but they have a champion there, and their corporate team meets about it and talks about it. So I think to be successful, you got to take it seriously.
Yeah, it's a good point because I definitely have seen, there's probably a few different approaches, but two that kind of just stick out to me from what I've seen from senior living providers and their social plan, right? Like one is the bare minimum. They just have Facebook profiles created. They'll just kind of push something out through all of them from the home office. They'll capture stories every now and then, and it's just, it's there, right? I don't think it's really moving the needle much. It's more of so just like keeping a pulse. But then there's the groups like you mentioned with like Story Point. I have to shout out my other friend there, Curtis, where they are taking it seriously, putting a strategy in place and really helping to maximize their kind of reach. And like, you kind of mentioned the things, right, of like recruiting people, trying to get more residents there. But I'm wondering what you think senior living's responsibility is to kind of change the narrative of aging, because I feel like with a lot of these posts it's helping to kind of paint those real stories. So I'm wondering if you could kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's the it in a nutshell. Like for me personally, I just think about myself, how much content I consume. We're going to make about 3,500 videos this year for our clients, so we're consuming a lot. Randy and I review every single video that we create, and your perception on life changes, much less aging. Like you just learn that time is so short, and that it's made up of a bunch of small decisions that make up one big decision. And a lot of times, those small decisions determine how happy you are in the last stages of your life. And fortunately, we've talked to a lot of really happy 90-plus-year-olds. And when I share those videos with my friends that don't work in the industry, I was talking this morning to some friends, and I say most people, the overwhelming majority answer of what's the happiest years of your life, most 90-plus-year-olds say their 60s. Some say their 70s. Some say now, like in their 90s, is the happiest they were ever then. But then when you're in your 20s, you think these are the best years. I got to live it up now because everything after this is downhill. Where when you talk to 90-year-olds, that's not the case at all. And so I think we have someone said this to me about a year ago. I think it was John Politz. He said he read that every time a person dies in a senior living community, it's basically like if you don't capture their story, you're basically burning down a library of stories, because they're so full of so many funny stories, heartfelt stories, stories that we can learn from. And I just think it's beyond just the business side that, sharing these stories help recruit, they help sell your community, they help connect families. I think the number one thing that it does is just reshape who you are and who your team are, and why we do what we do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it's great, right? I think getting that new perspective and new lease on life, right? And I think to your point too is, I just turned 35. The 30s have definitely been like my best decade yet. And it gives me hope knowing that there's better stuff ahead. And you had mentioned, kind of adjusting those perspective on things and with seeing these various stories. And, are there any stories that have really stuck with you? Is there any life lessons in shooting these videos that's really, made a profound impact on your life outside of the happiness? Or like, yeah, is there any that you still think about every single day or every week or so?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably say the very first story that made me start Dash is the one that sticks out the most. His name was Larry. He was a 98-year-old man living at AG Roads Nursing Home. This is before about 3 months before I started Dash. I went there with Jack York, and Jack was talking to this guy, and he told a story about when he was 17 years old. He was in the infantry for World War II, and they were in the beaches of Normandy, I believe it was, and he was under a ship for 3 days. Um, and he said, I was actually in the middle. So all these guys were like sandwiched in the ship for 3 days, 17 years old. He was sandwiched in the middle. He said, because when the doors went down, he remembers he was in the middle because when the doors went down, all the bullets came in and shot his buddies that were in the front. And so when his buddies got shot, he dove in underneath in the water and survived. And here he is, 98 years old, telling me this story about fighting for our country. And he said his two pieces of advice was love God and love your country, and you'll be happy in life. And then his other one was never go to bed angry at your wife. Um, so
Wow.
that guy stuck with me. He had never gotten to share that story before, and unfortunately, he passed away about 6 months later. But guys like Larry are. Larry is really one of the catalysts for why we started Dash. Those stories that go unheard need to be told.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's so cool to hear that story. And I have so many follow questions, probably to Larry himself, just how he was able to live underneath a boat for 3 days and make it out. Why?
Randy actually interviewed someone at Blue Skies Angel or Blue Skies of Texas. They have 700 residents. Used to be only for veterans, now it's for whoever. But he actually interviewed about a month ago the first ever POW in the Vietnam War. He got shot
Wow.
down in his plane. Six of the people on the plane died. Him and another guy survived, and he was a POW for 100 days and shared that experience with us at Blue. When we were interviewing him at Blue Sky. So there's just you know there's so much wisdom just filled in each and every person. That's what excites me too. Is people always ask, do you ever think the content will get old or stale? And it's no, because every single story is so uniquely different that you never really hear the same thing twice.
Right, exactly. And there's just so many residents out there that have such, I mean, living this long, you're bound to have some crazy experience, or I mean, even just like the general stuff, right? Or like the general knowledge.
Mhm.
And I know earlier in this interview, Nate, you had mentioned like the three people you would need to be successful. And I'm wondering outside of that, if senior living providers wanted to take social seriously, like what else would you suggest as kind of a starting point?
I think at first it comes down to like a plan to capture the content. So that was one of the things that we really learned in our first 2 years is a formula where we go in for 2 days and we actually film with two videographers and are able to get about 100 to 150 videos worth for social in
Wow.
those 2 days of filming. Um, so you have to understand a strategy around how are we getting this content. Then once you get it, how do you edit it in a way to optimize viewership in the algorithm on social? So things like does this grab your attention in the first second of the video? Because people are scrolling, they're scrolling. If you have a logo animation, and all these gadgets before the story is even told, no one's going to watch the story because they're going to keep swiping. So understanding how to edit to optimize for social would be the second part. And then distribution. So you film it, you edit it, you have this great piece of content. Now, where does it go and how does it get there? And then what is the latest trend? Hashtags used to be such a big deal 2 years ago. Now hashtags are kind of irrelevant. It's more about
Mhm.
keywords. TikTok surpassed Google is the number one search engine for Gen Z, last year. So that means that you have to use keywords for them to search for jobs in Texas or jobs in Austin, Texas when they're on TikTok. So it's how do we capture, how do we edit, and how do we distribute? And then the last piece was we've distributed, now where do people go? So if people want to live here or work here, how are we tracking that if that's important? Where are we directing people to? So like, we always recommend creating a landing page that says live here, work here, because you're going to have both types of people coming there. And so they need to know what to do when they've seen your video and they're on their page. So those are the kind of 4 things that I would say every organization should audit of themselves, and then, figure out a plan of action to actually do.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense too, right? I think having those potentially hard conversations when we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and like, what can we do to really place an emphasis on that and continue to shine light to that. And I think it's a great point. Work here, live here, right? I mean, it's usually one of the 2 options these senior living providers are looking for when people are going to their site. Or
One of the things that has amazed me in our first 2 years is you would think that would be very different type of content, is working here versus living here. Most people think like the intuitively what you would think is like, all right, if we want to recruit and have people attracted to work here, we need to show our workers, right? But if you ask every person in senior living, or most people in senior living, why they work in senior living, it's because of the residents, a resident that had impacted their life, or a story that they heard, or some meaningful connection to someone within senior living that made them want to pursue a career. So why not those same stories that we think attract people to live there actually attract people to work there even more? Jill Janes from Methodist Retirement says that their social media is better for recruiting than it is for selling and getting increasing their occupancy. And they don't post a single, or very rarely do they post any testimonials of their staff. It's all resident stories, and people fall in love with these residents, go to the page, say, where do these people live? Oh, wait, they're hiring? They have a job that I can work and care for people like Larry? Sign me up. And that's kind of, I think, the biggest misconception that I've seen is you got to have so much staff testimonial content, where in reality, you just got to share the stories of your residents and obviously some staff.
yeah, I love that, right? I mean, that's why people work in this industry to begin with, right? They have that sort of personal story, and this is just helping. And maybe a lot of the people that don't know about this industry don't have that personal story, but seeing these almost creates it for them and can help drive them to it, which is just awesome to see. And my final question here for you, Nate, it's gonna be super specific yet super vague. I mean, if you have any other final thoughts or senior living providers, whether they're thinking about capturing stories or amping up their social media, what would you say besides working with Dash Media?
Well, I've been thinking about this one a lot in the last 2, 3 weeks. If you look at how anyone has made a dent in an industry that has been around for hundreds of years. So like, let's take Gatorade and Powerade. Most investors would say, do not create a sports drink because Gatorade and Powerade own it. Or Hershey's chocolate. Do not create chocolate because Hershey's owns chocolate. Like, you're not going to gain any traction there. Well, the 2 fastest growing companies in both of those industries are solely growing and taking a tons of the market share because of social media. So Prime Energy Drink, or Prime Sports Drink, is taking tons of business from Gatorade and Powerade solely because of they have influencers that have a large following on social that promoted the heck out of this product, and now everyone's drinking it instead of Gatorade and Powerade. Same thing with Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast created the Feastables, and now all these kids want Mr. Beast's chocolate and not Hershey's chocolate. And that's like the treat. And they're willing to pay a premium for Mr. Beast's name on it, just like Prime is, 75 cents more than Gatorade. I'm willing to pay it because it tastes better. I've kind of bought into, all they're saying about it, and it's good. And so I think in the same way, anyone that wants to make a splash in senior living and not have staffing problems in 5 years when all these residents are wanting to move in, or have a brand where you can build a community anywhere and you have 10,000 people watching your content. Social media is the only place that you can really do that, and do it for fairly cheap. I think that in the past, to get 1 million people watching content from your brand, you had to pay a lot of money to news networks, to news outlets, do a lot of work. Now it's as simple as create and capture, edit, distribute, and have a plan of action when they do see it. And if you do that and give it enough time, you'll create an audience that you can build communities and operate communities wherever you want in the country, and have an audience there to want to live and work in those communities.
I love it. Well, Nate, thanks so much for joining here. I'll put some of your videos in the comments here in the description, just so people can have a chance to check those out. But from me to you, just know you guys are doing such important work, and grateful to call you a friend.
Thanks, Matt. Love it. Appreciate it.
If you'd like to know when we post the next episode, make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're interested in how Eversound can help improve the quality of life in your community, find out more at eversoundhq.com.